Mrs. Gandhi,
Here.
Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Lolansky,
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz,
Here.
Mr. Petruno,
Here.
Mrs. Seward,
Here.
and Mrs. Mendez.
Here. Okay, I'm going to draw your attention to Sunshine Law, Statement of Videotaping of Public Portion of Board of Ed Meetings, and the Public Comment Statement. I'm not going to read them in full, but I just wanted to make sure that you saw them. Also, the no smoking or vaping on school grounds. Can we please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Announcements?
Good evening, everyone. I do have one announcement that I'd like to make. As discussed in the past, the district is in the process of defining what an MTPS graduate looks like. So we have undergone, starting in the late fall, we had online interviews with our administrators. We also had a professional development last month with our administrators, and we are now in the process of reaching out to the greater school community. So for community members here in the audience, especially our parents, or if you're watching from home, you will expect us to be reaching out to you. We hope you will participate, because defining an MTPS graduate is not just what we think they should be. We also want to partner with our greater school community. So please look out for that in the coming weeks, and we'll be communicating to you. That information will be very important as we define, and not just what our 8th graders look like, right? We want to make sure we set our students up, even our pre-K students, all the way through 8th grade, and the skills and maybe some soft skills and some academic skills and other things that they may need. So when they leave us, the outside world can almost put a stamp on what an MTPS graduate looks like. So I'm really excited to see what that becomes, and part of that will also be defined by the greater community. So we're continuing that great work. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the updates. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive for matter of attorney-client privilege for approximately 15 minutes. Do I have a second? Annette, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Any opposed? Okay, we'll be back in just 10 to 15 minutes. comments. Do you need roll call again? I'm sorry. We're going to do a roll call. Apologies.
Mrs. Belomo?
Here.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Here.
Mr. Hyatt? Mr. Lalansky?
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Here.
Mr. Petruno?
Here.
Mrs. Seward? And Mrs. Mendez?
Here. Okay. We're now going to open to public comments. Anybody signed up?
Yes. So I have first Mr. Rob Marone.
Good evening. So we had a dialogue last meeting, and I will say this is officially, I've surpassed my lifetime's attendance to a board meeting ever, so this is something of particular interest to me. The last meeting, I asked a couple of questions about the letters sent to MEF by Mr. Zittimer back in August. I know some of you said you weren't familiar with them. Others were or were not, and I had asked early on in my comments about the legal authority that Mr. Zittimer or the board feels they had to issue this letter and make certain demands. So I'm going to read the paragraph from it that I'm referring to. And it thanks the organization, mentions how they may or may not dissolve, which I'd like to say is I don't really feel is relevant according to my question. But it says, we also understand that there has been some discussions that you and others may seek to dissolve the foundation. You are hereby respectfully directed not to do so. As you may know, it takes significant time, effort, and money to establish an education foundation, and it is not within your legal right to dissolve it. Importantly, we have had numerous members of the community come forward stating that to be honored and privileged to continue the good work of the foundation to support the Marlboro School District community. To that end, please provide Mr. Balone with a copy of the foundation's current IRS determination letter, bylaws, and articles of incorporation so we can continue the foundation's mission. So my question is, when we were going back and forth and I felt like we had a healthy dialogue, that same exact justification, and I don't believe it was probably the legal justification, of that it takes significant time, effort, and money to establish the foundation. A lot of things in life take significant time, effort, and money. So where does this authority come from? Can the board send a letter to the bagel shop down the street and say, send us your incorporating documents, your operating agreement, turn yourselves over to us? It's very important that we get a legal explanation. I've had several attorneys look at this letter, and unanimously, the initial response was something I probably should not repeat in public forum, but unanimously, all of them said, you don't. So I'm trying to figure out, is there a misunderstanding about the independence of the organization, who actually legally controls it? But the bottom line is, there's a letter sent on your firm's letterhead that directs them to not dissolve and tells them it's not within their legal right to do it. Can you elaborate how you come to those conclusions?
Sure. The foundation, as you know, is a legal entity whose primary mission, according to their tax filings, is to support the Board of Education, the school district, through fundraising and other efforts, which, as you pointed out, I gladly acknowledge, thank the foundation for their efforts. It is true that there's a lot of time and money involved in setting up a foundation. I've been through it before. It could take upward of a year. The concern was that we had received correspondence from the foundation back in, I think it was March, April-ish, from foundation leadership saying that they were going to dissolve it. And we believe it was in our rights to tell them, please not to do so, direct them not to do so, so that the foundation, which is established to support the district, didn't have to start from square one again.
So I understand.
I'm sorry, Mr. Morris, I
I'm
just want
sorry.
to clarify. I think you said August, correct?
August,
Is when we
okay.
received
Yeah.
that.
Are you referring to the letter, or I spoke
No, I'm talking
over,
about
so I didn't know what the question
I'm
was.
referring to
August or-
the initial communication that we got from the foundation leadership saying that they were about to
Yeah, that's
dissolve.
what
We became
August,
very
right?
concerned about that.
Yeah,
think it
just
was
to
August.
clarify, Mr. Balone was stating that the letter to dissolve was received in August.
Yeah, okay. So, no, I understand that it takes time, effort, and money. I understand that it could be a concern of the district if they were to lose that source. I don't deny that. I've been on several nonprofits myself.
Yeah.
I understand that there could have been outreach to say, would you guys mind if we sat down discuss perhaps appointing another set of trustees so that your current ones can dissolve. But you just said it again, that you felt it was within your legal interest. I'd have to go back and play it again, but you did say it again, that you felt it was within your legal right to send the letter. And I'm trying to understand.
Sure, of course it was
you
in
could
my-
send
it
any
was-
letter,
of
but
course-
you're directing them to not dissolve and telling them it's not within their legal right.
Yeah, I believe I can provide you with citation on that from counsel who does nonprofit work in my firm, but nevertheless, I believe it's within the school district's right to tell an organization that sole purpose, essentially, is to support the school district, not to dissolve. So we can debate this all night. I
Right.
don't think that's
Okay, that's
productive
fine. No,
use of our
if you can
time.
get the citation, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Jen Woodruff.
I just want to be brief. Jennifer Woodruff, Marlboro. I want to thank you for all you do, all the time and efforts, taking your personal time to help the community and the students. I particularly want to thank you for your decision in the fall relative to 5756 policy and your discernment relative to all the children. And I was just wondering if there's any status, anything's changed in the litigation, or it's still out there with the courts.
So the litigation is still ongoing. We filed an appeal of the court's injunction from last August, directing that we maintain the status quo of the old policy while the matter winds its way through the system, which is currently before the Division on Civil Rights. And quite frankly, it's moving at a very, very slow pace. Nothing really has happened at the Division on Civil Rights, despite the Attorney General's suggestion last year in open court that the matter would be resolved in 6 months. I knew at the time that that was simply a pipe dream. It never happened, and we're, again, basically waiting for the Division on Civil Rights either to schedule a hearing or a mediation or something along those lines, but nothing, quite frankly, has happened in quite some time.
Yeah, what a shame when they realized that it was guidance instead of mandatory. But I thank you and continue your good efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have no one else left on my list.
Anybody else want to speak? Okay, thank you. Okay, we are going to move now to the interviews for the board member vacancy, just to kind of go over the process so you're all looped in. There are 4 questions that are going to be asked. Each person is going to get the same 4 questions, and they will have 3 minutes to answer each question. I know, we'll be here for a little while, but it's all for good reason. And so we're going to ask those questions. Everybody gets the same, everybody gets the same time limit. After all candidates are up and they have all answered their questions, they're all going to kind of be removed, and then each person will come back when they are ready to go. And we have Mr. Slattery there who's going to kind of escort them out. After all of that happens and everybody has answered the questions, we're then going to go into executive, and I'll announce all of that, and it'll be about 30 minutes. We'll have some conversations, we'll come back out, and then we'll nominate the people that we feel should be moving forward. And then we'll vote, and then there will be an action taken where a person will be selected and they will be sworn in. So I just wanted to make sure that we all felt okay with the process and understood what was happening. Okay, so we're going to start. So I think all the candidates, right, will go with Mr. Slattery. Besides, we're going to start with the first person, and the first person will be Ms. Cheryl Scorzo. So if you can come to the mic, and anybody else who submitted an application can please go with Mr. Slattery. We just ask for the integrity of the whole process, that you're not on your phones, okay? So we just do ask that. That's just a request we have. So we'll give them a minute to kind of leave the room, and then we will start. Cheryl Scorzo. Okay, so Ms. Scorzo, welcome. I know this is an easy process, so we're kind of gonna go with that. So Mr. Lalansky and I will ask the questions, and the other board members will take notes or whatever they feel comfortable doing. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank
I
you.
don't know.
Welcome. First question. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
Okay, well, I've lived in Marlboro for over 40 years, and all my children have gone through the school system in Marlboro, the elementary school, the middle school, high school. They all got a very quality education. They all were very well prepared for college. They got into good schools. They all got successful jobs, very good jobs. So to me, I wanted to see that continue. I have a lot of friends in town that have grandchildren that'll be coming into our schools. I have friends of my children that have moved back into the community, which really speaks very high for our community, that they're willing to come back and raise their families here. I have neighbors that have small children that are going to be coming into the schools. So I wanted to see that continue, and I wanted to pretty much be an advocate for these children, and to bring to light any concerns that my neighbors and people in town may have. And also, I just wanted to see to continue. I've been very involved, and I volunteer in town here, and I've been PTA president. I've done a lot of things, and I wanted to continue to serve my community in this capacity.
Thank you. Question 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
Okay. Well, I'm an educator myself, and to me, that's paramount. I think communication is very important. I think that I like the coffee chats that you have. I think it's very important to bring the parents in, to have parent workshops. I know when I was PTA president at the Marlboro Elementary School, that at that time computers were very new to all of us, and a lot of us didn't have a lot of basic computer skills. One of the things I did was I had the computer teacher. Our PTA provided a stipend to avoid any problems with the union. We provided a stipend for the computer teacher. He did a 6-week course and taught some basic skills for us. So, I think it's very important to have parent workshops, especially, I'm a special ed teacher, and I see what those parents have to know, what they have to go through, the paperwork they have to provide. They need support systems. I think it's very important to have professional development, for the teachers. You have to work as a team. I know I'm trying to stay in 3 minutes. So I just think it's very important to bring the parents in and to have that open communication between the school and the community and parents.
Thank you. What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
Yeah, from what I've heard from people that I've talked to in town and people that I've met, I think one of the things was, of course, the facility maintenance. I know that that's very difficult to prioritize. Everything is, important. Of course, you're very limited with budget, which, is important. So I would say facility maintenance, shortage of bus drivers, which a lot of the districts are all having problems, my district as well. Also, with the special needs students, making sure that, they're getting what they need, that the department is communicated with. That's a concern. And I just think the technology, the balance between technology and paper and pencil instruction for the students, that's a concern. I think COVID was an eye-opener for all of us, and I think that we saw that there's just no substitute for teacher guidance. In fact, during COVID, what I did was I made binders for my students with all kinds of work in it, and my aide and myself, we delivered it to all of my students. And then when I had them on screen, they had it in front of them so that they could follow me, and they were doing, some writing and, some skills that I think are very important. Technology has its place, but I think it really does not replace, basic paper and pencil.
Thank you. And last, what measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
Yeah, I think that's all over. You have to be creative. A lot of times, a lot of things that I wanted to do, even within my own department, because as a supervisor, I was a math supervisor. There were a lot of things that I needed, a lot of things I needed to do, and I would go to the superintendent. He would tell me there's no budget. He told me to be creative. So what I did was I looked for resources. A lot of professional development that I have implemented in my district has to do with organizations like DVR, DDD, ARC. They'll all come free. I also had recruited some of the students from Monmouth University that was nearby our school, and I had student volunteers that were in education. I had them come in and assist in the classrooms as, just an extra set of hands, because we had a shortage of aides. And a lot of times, if you don't have a classroom that has, classified students, you are not, you're not going to get an aide, but you might have 25 kids in front of you that have all different learning levels and learning styles, and you're trying to differentiate your instruction, and there's only one of you. So I had a lot of students come in and help out. So there's a lot of free resources out there. There's a lot of businesses that are willing to, contribute. So, you have to, look at that. I was particularly impressed with the presentation of budget at the coffee chat. It reminded me of my class with the wants and the needs. And so you do have to prioritize, which, sometimes can be a challenge and difficult to choose, but you do have to, look at that. So, basically just trying to be resourceful.
Thank you so much, Ms. Scorzo. So you've answered all of the questions, so thank you. You can have a seat in here. You don't have to leave the room. And the next person, Mr. Slattery, is Adam Pollock. Thank you so much.
You can sit next to me. Yeah.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'd like to introduce to anybody who's listening or watching or sitting here, this is Mr. Adam Pollock, so thank you for coming out today. And we'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Welcome. Question 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experience do you have to bring to the table?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me an interview. It's really exciting for me. Appreciate the opportunity. So there's really 3 reasons why I'm applying to the board. The first is that I love Marlboro. My family loves Marlboro. I've been a resident here for 12 years. We're super active in the community. I have 2 daughters in the district, a 1st grader and a 3rd grader. I'm active in Marlboro as a coach. Right now I'm a coach for rec basketball. Go Suns, we're in 1st place. I'm active in the Dugan PTO. I'm active in Jersey Shore Girl Scouts. I'm active in Marlboro football and cheer. I have 2 proud 2 Mustang cheerleaders. We leverage the aftercare program and champions for before care and aftercare. Both me and my wife work. We go to the farmer's market every weekend when it's open. We go to Marlboro Day. We do trunk or treat. We're all about Marlboro, and I love living here. So I want to get more involved. Second reason is I think my business career provides a unique subject matter expertise that could help the board. I'm focused on strategy, business development, sales, and leadership. I have a unique subject matter expertise around negotiation and conflict resolution. I'm an executive at a wealth management firm. And I think that my experience in guiding outcomes and conflict resolution could help the board and could help with some of the issues that are going on here in the town. The last reason is I became much more active in thinking about the board and the school system during COVID, as a lot of parents did. That's right when my daughters were getting into the school district. I had, my older daughter was going into kindergarten in 2020. So that's when I got involved in the district and I saw what was going on there. I was sympathetic to the concerns of a lot of the residents here about how COVID was handled. I understand why people had strong opinions about all of this. I was sympathetic to the changes in the board in 2021. I was sympathetic to the changes and supportive of the changes to the board in 2022. 2023 was a little different for me in regards to 5751. I was concerned with how polarized the town had gotten because of 5751. And I thought the execution of the policy could have been handled in a little bit of a softer way and maybe a little bit less polarizing to the town. And I think that's where I can add some value to the board. The Board of Education election this year was also very polarizing, and it made me upset as a resident here, and I wanted to make a broader impact. Thank you.
Question 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
I am 100% adamantly parental rights. I very much believe that parents should be notified of anything that's going on with their children. I'm also sympathetic to protecting protected classes and protecting people that might not have the support that I have or I provide to my family. So I love to debate these types of topics. I love to talk about them. So I think there's a middle ground that everybody can agree with. Any member of the community that I speak with, where it seems like when you talk to people face to face about these topics, most people agree with what's going on and doing what's best for the students and the community. So I don't think it is as polarizing as people are making it out to be. And I just wish we could take the temperature down a little bit, talk about it, not talk through each other, but talk about these things. And again, this is where I think some of my business experience could come into play. I have to deal with a lot of tough, complex negotiations in my career, and we always come up with a compromise. Whenever I'm dealing with clients or constituents in my company, we always come up with a compromise. We never don't make it work. So I think there's strategies here to find win-wins that will make sense for all community members, and I'm excited to work on those types of topics and issues.
Thank you.
What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
Sure. Something that I'm super passionate about is the effects of what's going on with our students post-COVID. My kids came into the school system right during COVID. I had to deal with quite a bit of issues, just like many of us did. And I don't think we necessarily understand some of the implications of what's going on here, both academically and socially to our students. I think that and I think those issues are different depending on what grade your child was in, or if they were going into kindergarten or first grade, or if they were in middle school, or they're going through, some of those tougher ages in middle school. We don't really know what's going on, and there's so much things happening and changing from a technological perspective in school, introduction of phones, introduction of screens, things like this. And what is that doing to everybody? So I think that should be a really focus for the board moving forward about what the implications are for the students, both socially and on education. Back to 5751, I think that, I'm extremely sympathetic to the concerns of the community around the guidance that was provided. And I think that topic is an extremely polarizing topic in our town because of how it's being discussed, not what is actually happening. And if I was choosing the issues that I would be focused on, that's probably not something that I would be really concerned about myself or in my raising my family. But it's something that we are talking about, and it's something that people are interested in. And I think making sure that we're representing our town and our district in the appropriate way, and making sure we're setting the right example of how we want to interact with each other for people that we don't necessarily agree with, but maybe we understand different motivations. I think that's super important. Again, I am very sympathetic to the concerns of what people had about it, but at the same time, I don't think it's as divisive as people are making it appear to be, and I want to help dissolve some of those concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Pollack, can I just clarify? You're referring to the transgender policy, right? It's 5756. I just want to make sure I'm saying the right thing, right? So I have my notes. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure I was writing the right note down. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, questions 4. What measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
Yeah, this is something I'm very familiar with. I've spoken to Vinny and had some questions about this in the past. For my job, I am in charge of business line. I am working on a budget that I'm held to. I run a P&L line for that business. So something I'm very familiar with. I negotiate very large contracts in my professional career and have to interact with different legal teams, vendor management team, procurement teams, things like that. Personally, I'm very fiscally conservative. That's how I think I would approach most of the issues regarding the budget. I think it's a balancing act of where the funds are going to go between general education, special education, what the town should be focused on. And again, I'm willing to listen to all constituents, work with the administrators, work with the teachers. I think everybody is here because they care about the students that are in our district. I know that's why I'm here. I know that's why you are all sitting up here, because you care about the kids. You want the schools to be good. But at the same time, we need to be fiscally prudent. We need to find places where we can always look to save, but again, not sacrifice the great education we have in Marlboro. The reason I live in Marlboro is because I wanted to raise my kids, and my wife wanted to raise our kids in Marlboro because we have a great school system. I'd also say, because this is my last question and I have a minute and 20 seconds left, that my wife is a special education teacher. She works in Somerset County. She's been a teacher for 15 years, and we're very passionate in our personal lives around altruistic activities associated with the special education community. It's something that she's passionate about that I didn't really know anything about before I met my wife, and it's something that I've become passionate about focusing our time and making sure that all kids are represented appropriately. And she actually has a very unique experience from being a teacher for the last 15 years and understanding some of the decisions that are made from a budgeting perspective around special ed, and something that I've learned a lot about over the last couple of years. So those things that I've learned, I think, could also help the board and have a real life teacher right by my side who is influencing those decisions. Thank you for interviewing me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Pollack. Appreciate the answers. Next is Sesha Sridevi Alluri. He has it? Okay. Sorry.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for coming out today. Mrs. Alluri?
Yes.
Thank you. We're going to ask our 4 questions. Michael?
Okay. Welcome. Question 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
Thank you for the question. Currently my position is I work as a senior lecturer at Stevens Institute of Technology, wherein I teach undergraduate and graduate courses, as well as participate in some of the committee work related to undergraduate curriculum, in addition to many other initiatives such as research spine that the CCB runs. I do that's the program that is designed for the seniors to complete their 1 year of research sequence to prepare them for outside jobs. And I do feel that one of the many reasons that I do want to participate as a member in the Board of Education committee is to bring my skills that I've learned in my higher education, and hopefully I'm more interested in curriculum changes and bringing new changes to the curriculum, and also understand the process by which the board works at the district school level as well.
Thank you. Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
So in terms of strategies for promoting children's education is to be involved in the child's education, not just in terms of the academics as well. In creating a well-rounded individual, the students would have to be involved in other extracurricular activities like sports and music, and I do support the educational system which tends to promote all these activities and tries to create a well-rounded experience where the students can thrive and also prepare them better for the future educational aspirations.
Thank you.
What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
I mean, to be really honest, I have never been a board member. I have not attended any of the meetings, but that is one of the many reasons that I do want to get myself involved. And I do believe in creating an atmosphere for the students where they are able to thrive and create an impact to the outside world. So in terms of, I mean, one of the things that I do think which would be important is the communication and keeping up with the technology, because the technology is changing quite fast, and in terms of bringing students and the schools up to date, there has to be a knowledge and openness to accept these technologies for promoting great curriculum and prepare the students for the future.
Thank you. And what measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
So in terms of the budget is always the concern. Like for many things, even I do feel that it is, even in where I work, like we do have to work within the constraints of the budget system, still provide high quality education to the students. So some of the things, I mean, that I can think of for improving education to keep the quality of the teaching staff and maintain good practices, even within the budget shortfalls, create a system where you can help students thrive better. And to be more specific, getting more funds to the fields that matter that in terms of rising technology. So those are some of the things that I would address more while limiting other aspects. But however, I do not want to cut down on any of the extracurricular activities because it is really helpful for creating a well-rounded individual student body.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Alluri.
Thank you.
You can have a seat. Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, how's it going?
How are you? Can you
I'm good,
just
how are
state your name?
My name is Nirav Kadakia.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
We're just going to ask you our 4 questions. I'll turn over to you, Michael.
Welcome.
Hi.
Question number 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
So so my wife and I moved in to Marlboro about 12 years ago. And when we were looking for places to live, Marlboro was one of the communities that we looked at, education and the community. So I felt that's important as I answer this question because to me, I grew up in New Jersey and we knew about Marlboro with the excellent school system, excellent community, and that's why we moved here. I have 2 daughters, 4th grade and 2nd grade in Robertsville. And my motivation or what's influenced me to join the board is not just them, but for the education that we can provide to our students. I am a big believer that we need to ensure our children get the best education, that they're able to go to school without fear, have the tools and support they need to become productive members. And I feel like with me on the board, I can help our community and our children to get that, to be the leaders that we want them to be productive members of society. I have over 15 years of leadership experience. The way I look at it, leadership isn't just, telling people what to do and kind of looking at a to-do list and say, thou shalt do this, right? Leadership is to be able to nurture, to be able to grow, to be able to mentor. And in my 15 years that I've been doing this, what I've been so proud of, in the private sector is mentoring employees, seeing them succeed. And that's what I would bring as a fellow board member. I have experience in working with on RFPs as well as budgeting, which I think is a big deal when you're on a board, and especially a large budget that the Board of Education has. And I'm sure we have to work with very many vendors and suppliers. And I've been on both sides of the RFP process, understand how important that is, and understand how we need to make sure that we make the right decisions when we choose a vendor or a supplier so that they become a partner of us, right? In addition to that, for budgeting, the same thing. I've managed budgets, fairly large budgets, some small budgets. And to me, my experience when it comes to those types of things is not just to look at how much we can spend, how much we have spent, but continuously looking at that. Where are we going? Where's our spend going? Not just be shocked at the end of the fiscal year when, what the numbers come out to, but actually have cadences and review what our spend is against our budget and keep on looking at that and build some KPIs around that. I only have 13 seconds. I have a couple more things. I'm a big believer in objective and key results and making sure we have proper key performance indicators or KPIs. And these are things that I would love to introduce if I'm able to join the board so that we can measure ourselves for that number one goal is to provide our children the best that they can. Okay.
Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
I think parents and family are the most important aspect of a child's education, right? I mean, as a parent, my wife and I were heavily involved in our children's education, to make sure that they get what they can, all the nurturing and the support that they need. And I think that family and parents are very critical in that. Of course, like parents are a heavy part of that, as well as the community, as well as working with the board, as well as working with other teachers and administration and staff. We all need to come together and decide what's best for our children. And of course, the parents are the most paramount, right? That's the number one role. And they're probably the most important aspect of that, alongside working with others.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
One thing that I look at, the pandemic wasn't good, as we all know, right? It affected a lot. And I think that one of the biggest things that I've seen and reports that we've had here, there's been a lot of learning loss with our children, with our students. And it's tough, right? Because when there's this learning loss, especially with the younger, this is K to 8, right? So K to 8th grade. So especially as younger students, with that learning loss, sometimes it's hard to recover. So I think one of the biggest things for us to think through is, how do we get to that level? We'll bring them back to at least to the level of pre-pandemic numbers, right? And I know, and this is a testament to the board and the parents and the teachers and administration, that Marlboro's K to 8 numbers weren't as bad, if I could use that word, than other school districts across the state, right? So that's something to be proud of, but we're not where we were pre-pandemic. So for me, we need to, first step is to get our children back to that level, get everyone back to the level where we were pre-pandemic. Second step after that is to say, okay, let's look around the state and look at other districts similar to ours, right? We know the socioeconomic, the demographics that we have here, similar to that, and say, okay, how are we compared to those school districts? And and we should strive to say, okay, if we are not at this level, how do we get there? And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. We kind of, we're behind the 8 ball a little bit because of the pandemic, and now we need to do that. And kind of measure ourselves against other school districts and see how we can go. So I think that's a big factor of it. I think the second thing is we need, this is actually going to be, this is tough for a lot of parents and everyone, is technology, right? We need to start realizing that technology is not just a part of our life, it has been a part of our lives for some time, and so is AI, right? These are two things that have been part of our lives and are part of our lives. And we need to start introducing this to our young children, just like we introduce math, science, arithmetic, writing, reading. Those are critical. This is another step that's critical, is to make them understand that this is not something to be feared, something to learn from, something to understand, and something to use as a tool to succeed, right? Not just being able to use the ST Math or IXL, but be able to understand how those work, right? And to be able to embrace that and learn that and understand that in the future, they need technology for them to succeed. They need to know how to program, they need to know how to build things. This is critical.
And last question, what measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
It's a tough one. It's tough, right? Trying to manage a budget is probably one of the most difficult things to do, because you want to make sure that you fall within the budget while providing the best that you can. So without having everything in front of me, with the budget in front of me and the spend in front of me, it's hard for me to answer that question, but we would have to look at what are we spending our money on, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that requires two things, I think. One is to understand line by line, what are we spending our money on? What do we budget on? And if difficult cuts have to be made, what can we, right? And that's like the worst thing, but what can we do? And also the last thing on that is how do we increase our revenue, right? How do we get money in? You know, if that means a difficult thing for increasing taxes, which obviously is probably better than cutting staff or cutting programs. You know, we have to. That's something that has to be balanced, and that's difficult. And the other thing I think we would have to ask ourselves is, sometimes there are unforeseen things, but how do we get there, right? And I think I said it earlier. When it comes to budgets and managing budgets, it should not be a snap that, oh, you know, we're falling behind. If we do cadences and we look at it and we continue to look at the budget and our spend, what's coming in, what's going out, and we keep on looking at that and we look at the budget itself and say this is what we expected month over month or week over week, quarter over quarter, then we'll be able to understand. Then this won't be a shock to us, and then maybe we can message that out to the community to say, hey, listen, yeah, we had this budgeted, but the way we're trending, you know, something happened, right? I don't know, there was more snowstorms, whatever. Something happened that caused us to, we're not going to hit it, right? We're going to be under, and actually over, and but that transparency has to happen, right? And I think that's it. We have to look within ourselves and say, how do we improve that? Make sure that we don't get, you know, slammed with that at the end.
Okay. Thank you so much. You
Oh.
can have a seat, and thank you for
All
your
right.
answers.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. You're
Good
getting to
evening.
the end.
If you can please state your name.
Sure, good evening. I'm Brian Cohen. I'm from Marlboro. Nice to meet everyone, and thank you for having me this evening.
Thank you. We're going to start with the questions. Michael?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Question number 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
Thank you. Excellent question. So I have been a Marlboro resident for 12 years, actually a little bit more than 12 years. I have also been, my kids have been Marlboro students. They have now aged out of the district, and fortunately they have gone on to college. But I have a very strong belief in public education, and personally, both as a person who grew up through public education, my kids who went through public education, so what I can do for the board and what it does for this community is extremely important to me, and that has motivated me. I have also focused on sort of the needs of the students in my career, and I'll get to that in just a moment. But you know, I believe that the board and what I can bring to the board is focused on not being a political organization, but being a serving organization to help it elevate the need of the students and what this community needs from an education perspective. From qualifications perspective, I have over 20 years in a senior leadership position as a public higher education official. I served as the Vice Chancellor for the City University of New York, heading up technology for the entire system. You may be familiar with CUNY, but it is over 250,000 students. I have expertise in K through 12. I'm a Vice President for the Center for Digital Education, which is a national organization that serves K through 12 and higher education institutions across the country. We work with doing thought leadership papers. We put events together that elevate the issues that are affecting education today. I have financial expertise. I've managed organizations that had over $80 million budgets per year, and my capital budget exceeded over $300 million over a 5-year period of time. In fact, I even I even managed a budget for a project that was over $300 million. I bring nonprofit experience. I serve on two not-for-profit boards, in which I am also the treasurer for one, and have served on the nominations committee, as well as the secretary for the financial committees. So you can see that from my professional experience, I have a lot of qualifications, but I'm also a lawyer. I don't practice in the state of New Jersey, but my background has given me enormous expertise in contract negotiations, as well as knowledge of laws that impact education, FERPA, HIPAA, and a lot of the other privacy laws, as well as knowledge of E-rate, FCC rules. Those are all things that I've been responsible for managing. So hopefully that sort of gives you some in-depth about my background.
Thank you. Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
Well, it's a great question. And I think there's lots of strategies that can be thought about. But first is sort of engaging parents in their education and the education plan. It's making them aware of the opportunities that are available to their kids in our school systems. It's about bringing them in and being part of the learning process. It's about also emphasizing the fact that learning doesn't stop here in the schools. It has to continue at home. It's not just sort of during the school year, but it's year-round. And learning has to be a ubiquitous opportunity that occurs all the time. I believe that the parents should be engaged. They should be aware. They should be able to have access to their teachers and to the administrators and to this board. And the more that this board can do to engage parents on a day-to-day basis, and the more that the schools can do to engage parents on a day-to-day basis, is extremely important and tactical to improving and elevating our education.
Thank you.
Thank you. What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
Great question. And I think there's a lot of them. Let me give you some of what I believe are the top ones, and not in any particular order. I think learning loss, although this district's learning levels are much higher than at the state or even at the national level, if you look at the learning loss that occurred during COVID, we haven't fully recovered that. So I think learning loss is important to sort of continue to address, and the more that the board can do to support the administration, both from policy and from finance, is extremely important. I think focusing on the needs of our special ed students and our mental health for our students and our faculty are also very important issues for this board. Budget. While the board has found ways to sort of help support the administration and keep the budget balanced, it's a constant challenge. Costs go up, salaries go up, and there is, clearly a concern nationally as well as here that there's a fiscal cliff coming, in which the cost, there will be less funding available to school districts across the country and across this district as well. I think keeping our curriculum and supporting our administrators and making sure that the curriculum remains fresh and challenging for our students. I believe that there is a huge challenge that's ahead of us with teacher retention and recruiting that this board needs to sort of keep in front of. And then I'll close with two important points. Continuing to engage the community and the parents, and that this board needs to overcome some of the perceptions in the past and continue to just stay focused on what's important, and that's the students.
Thank you. And last question, what measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
It's a great question. Professionally in my career, we had to find ways in which we were able to reduce operating costs and shift the savings over to the academic community so that there was more investment in our teaching and learning. And I think that we would have to look at how we can do that here. We'd have to look at where the expenses are, where are the biggest costs associated with, and how we can find ways to sort of reduce those operating costs, either through better contract negotiations, through procurements, through the opportunity of looking for shared services or across the district or across other districts. But I would look for ways to find operational efficiencies and then use those savings to help shift to the academic side of the house and help fund some of those deficiencies if in fact there was a shortfall there.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen.
You're very welcome.
Good evening. Thanks for coming out. Can you please state your name?
Yes, Jamie Crystal.
Thank you. We're going to start with your 4 questions.
Sure.
Michael?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Question number 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
What inspired me was being a parent and a part of the Marlboro community. I am involved in the Marlboro community in my children's activities, and the main reason why I wanted to be a part was because we had moved here due to the schools and the education that this district provides, and I want to be a part of that and help with the decisions that are being made because I do believe that this is a wonderful school district. Some of my background is I do work in education, and I'm part of different committees, and some of the skills that I can bring are I'm part of my school's climate culture. I'm the coordinator for that, as well as the crisis team and many different committees that I am the coordinator for. So I have a lot of experience in education and in what students need as a counselor, and I feel like I could really bring forth my skills and work with the board to help our students, and that's the main reason why I wanted to become a member, was to help kids. And I think that's a goal that the board has, and to see them be successful and to be able to provide as much opportunities that they can. Another reason why I feel like I wanted to be a board member was to, again, to support my children, but also the rest of the students in the Marlboro community to the best, of my ability.
Thank you. Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
I believe that parents are the most influential part of a child's experience. As having 2 children of my own, students learn everything at home, right? It's reinforced at school, but the way that a parent raises their children is really important, and the school reinforces a lot of those different attributes. They raise them, they're their other set of family. Teachers are like second parents, especially in the elementary levels, because they do provide support for children from administration to the counseling aspect, as well as the teachers. They help develop students and their skills, and as they grow up, the school has always been there for them and is an important part of their journey. So I think parents are a great and most powerful and influential. As students get older, it's part of their friends, but I think the other component is the school. Students learn a lot from school, not besides the educational component, but just behaviors, things from other students, and how they manage and cope with life. So there's a lot of other skills that students learn from peers, such as social skills, coping skills, and really make them the person who they are as they grow up and get older.
Thank you.
Thank you. What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
You have your hands full. There's a ton of important issues, and I think the most challenging thing for a board is to appease everyone, right? You want to hear everyone out, you want to hear the community, but at the same time, you have to do what's in the best interest of the school district, which is ultimately the best interest of the children. So I think a lot of this is difficult, being a board member and dealing with these difficult issues, and there are many difficult issues that a school district and board deal with. And I think going back to hearing everyone out, making sure that the community is heard, but ultimately composing what is best for the school district, what is best for the children is most important. And I think at the end of the day, you're not going to make everyone happy, but as a board, as a district, you have to do what's in the best interest of all parties, especially what's in the best interest, of the students.
Thank you. What measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
In regards to budget, I know last year, each year, I feel like schools always lose some form of funding. So I think it's important to take a look at what exactly, everything is being spent on, and not limiting the amount of resources that we provide for students. Cutting where it can be cut. I think last year the board did an excellent job with the budget. However, if this year moving forward things need to be cut, I think it's going to be a hard decision, but the most important things are that you're not cutting what's most important, which is programs for children. Making sure that there's enough resources in the buildings and everything that the school district is known for, all the wonderful programs, the special education programs, and all the other remedial programs like LEAP that have been very successful in previous school years. So I think, making sure that you're keeping all the important programs and cutting where you can, whatever that may look like, but not cutting things that, obviously impact our children.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Appreciate you coming out. Thank you.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening. Can you please state your name?
Ashley McCormack.
Thank you. We're going to start with your 4 questions. Michael?
Welcome. Question number 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education? What specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
3 minutes. Okay. I have to give you a little bit of my backstory, and I'll keep it short. So in 2020, I attended my first Board of Ed meeting, and it was virtual. And when it ended, I was completely lost. I knew nothing about how a district ran. I didn't know anything about the roles of the board. And I was empowered to be an active parent, so I taught myself. I spent all of the summer months in 2020 watching archive meetings. I went all the way back to 2015. I read all the policies pretty much, or at least scanned most of them. I did everything in my power to familiarize myself. And I started and continued coming to Board of Ed meetings. I have only missed one meeting in 4 years. Let's see. And so, on top of all of that, I also volunteer. I was on the executive board at David Abbott as a treasurer for 2 years, and then I am currently an executive board member with Robertsville, holding a events chair. And I think that my care for the children of this district, along with the passion and the dedication that I already have for this board, has kind of empowered me to apply for this spot. It's not a hobby to me, it's a passion. I consider myself a single mom at night because my husband works nights, and it takes a lot to come to every single meeting. I'm sure you guys know that. I have 2 kids. I have 4 total, 2 stepdaughters and 2 of my own. And I have to make sure that I have a sitter, and I have to make sure that they've been fed, homework's been done, they've been bathed. That whole thing has to be done, and I still make it to every meeting because, like I said, it's not a hobby, this is a passion. And even if I don't have the opportunity to sit on the dais, I will never stop coming because I care about these kids. All 4,500.
Thank you. Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
Can you repeat it one more time?
What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
I support all the strategies that the board has presented over the last year. I actually attended the court hearing for 5756, sat behind the board. I am a huge advocate for parents' rights. I think that, I think that no one should tell you what to do with your child. That's your child. I think that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but when it comes to school, they're there to be educated. That's it. I think that, there needs to be guidance for the teachers and for the staff. So I'm definitely a proponent or a believer or I agree with 5756, 100%. Sorry, I hate public speaking. I agree with it 100%, and like I said, I'm a pro-parent 100%, so I agree with all the strategies they put in place, and I stand behind 5756 in the way it was written.
Thank you.
Thank you. What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
So I think that there's always going to be hot topics. There's always going to be something happening, something coming down from the state. But I think that there are 2 main concerns that the board faces every year, no matter what. The first one is the budget. There's never going to be enough money no matter what, right? Because we want our children to have everything. And the second thing would be keeping a good relationship with the parents of the district, the stakeholders, as well as administration, because you need to work together, collaborate together. You have to have a good rapport with parents. They have to trust you. They have to know that you guys are watching the district and that everything is running on the up and up. And like I said, as for the budget, there's never, ever going to be enough money. Last year, the board cut a little over $1 million, and they still went to a 2.7% increase. And I applaud them for that. Actually, I applaud you guys for that. That was amazing. And I honestly think that that's the right thing to do. Make sure you trim the fat before you raise taxes. But obviously, the most important thing is to provide the best education for our kids. So I am not a fan of cutting staff. They're there with the kids. They're on the front line. So that's always, in my opinion, going to be the last step.
Thank you. What measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
Kind of just touched on that, but like I said, definitely trimming where we can trim, because we have to be fiscally responsible. You know, times are tough. We should not be raising taxes every year. Without a doubt, we should not. But it would be fiscally irresponsible to not raise taxes once in a while. So, you know, we have the bank cap this year. I think if I was given the opportunity, I'd obviously give my all. I always give myself 100%, you get me? So I would spend a lot of time with Vinny, making sure. I also have a background in accounting, so I would make sure that we went line by line, department by department, to make sure that every area that can be trimmed is trimmed, because, you know, it's important to make sure that our students are prepared for what they need for their education, especially like our special ed department. They're our most vulnerable students. That part of the budget should really always stay intact. But like I said, I'm not a big fan of raising taxes every year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Hi.
Good evening. Can you please state your name?
Sure. My name is Roger Resnikoff.
Thank you. We're going to start with your 4 questions. Michael?
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Question 1. What inspired you to run for the Board of Education, and what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
So what inspired me? What inspired me is I'm deeply committed to the education and well-being of our community's children, and specifically, I have twin third graders currently at Marl for the next 9 years. And I believe that serving on the Board of Education provides a unique opportunity for me to contribute positively to the educational experiences of our students and my children, as I said, and the overall success of our school district. Well, was there a second part of the question? I'm sorry?
Sure. And what specific skills or experiences do you bring to the table?
Sure. As far as my skills, let's see. I mean, I have leadership experience. My leadership experience is throughout my professional life, I've demonstrated strong leadership skills and a proven ability to collaborate with other stakeholders to achieve common goals. Usually, these stakeholders have very different opinions on the way things that they want things to go, and although with the same goal of wanting a particular goal. Are you asking about experience as well as far as skills?
Yeah.
Okay.
Skills and experiences that
Sure.
you bring to the table.
At the nonprofit Child Mind Student, I led advocacy efforts aimed at transforming the lives of children struggling with mental health and learning disorders by education and improving access to health care. I've worked on many advocacy campaigns for marginalized communities, including children. That's really about it.
Thank you. Next question. Question number 2. What strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
What strategies, and can you be a little more specific?
Sure. Well, the general question is,
Yeah.
what strategies do you support for promoting parental and family involvement in their children's education?
Are there specific strategies you're referring to? I mean, I support parental involvement with their children's education, and I support being as open and honest and engaging with parents as far as their children's education is concerned. Is that what you're asking? Are you asking for specific strategies?
How would I explain that more?
It's really just a question that you can answer however you're comfortable. So strategies that you support for promoting whatever, if you've dealt with that in your experience or whatever it might be, or currently on the board or past boards. It's just a question on strategies for parental involvement.
Sure. In the past, I've created, when I've worked on other boards, I've worked in other organizations, I've fostered open dialogue, because that's the most important, really, is to have transparent communication in order to reach a consensus. I respect the differences of people's opinions, people's levels of involvement, because that's also very important as well. But bottom line, I'd want to focus on student impact, because that's really what we're here for.
Thank you.
Sure.
What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
Let's see. Prepared some stuff. Let me see. I'd like to say can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
What are some of the most important issues or concerns facing the board today?
I'd say a few things. Academic excellence and student achievement, school safety and security, as well as equity and inclusivity. As far as academic excellence is concerned, I think really, as we all, I'm sure, are here for, we want to ensure that students receive the highest quality education that they can, and they have the support that they need to succeed academically. As far as school safety is concerned, it's important to maintain a safe and secure learning environment. As far as equity and inclusivity, I feel like that promoting equity and inclusivity in our schools is essential to ensure that every student has the opportunity to thrive academically and socially.
And last question, what measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Yes. What measures would you take to address budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges while maintaining the quality of education within our schools?
When you say what measures, can you be a little more specific? Just because I don't know what the budget is and I don't know what the shortfalls are, so I can't really make an educated answer on what I would do specifically.
Yeah, so the question is what measures would you take to address any budget shortfalls or unexpected financial challenges? So what would you do is the question.
I would work with all the stakeholders that we have, the board, anyone who is in charge of the finances, and try to come to some sort of conclusion that is best for our children.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I just first want to thank everybody for coming out and for answering all of the questions. I appreciate it. I appreciate the support that people are providing. I'd now like to make a motion to go into executive session to have a discussion regarding the candidates. Can I have a second? Aldo. Any discussion? All in favor? The duration of the executive session will be approximately 30 minutes. When we come out, action will be taken. Thank you. Okay. First, I want to just thank everybody for coming out. I know I thanked you before, but I want to thank you again. I know it's probably not easy answering those questions live and on the spot. I know is very difficult, and so I thank you all for taking the time to kind of familiarize yourselves with the board and even come out. And we always encourage anybody that if you're not selected tonight, we always encourage people to come out. And there's also the campaign, which is always fun times. So I just want to let you all know that. I say that lightheartedly for all of us. But anyway, I just wanted to really thank you all for coming out. I know that was not easy. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zittimer. He's going to explain kind of the process, and then we'll start.
Okay. So the process that we're going to follow to fill this vacancy is codified in Board Policy 0143. The process is that the board president will open the floor to nominations to fill the open seat. Any board member can nominate any of the candidates who applied tonight. Every nomination requires a second. After everybody's nominated whoever they'd like to nominate, the board president will ask for a motion to close the nominations. That's just simply locking in the pool of candidates who are nominated. Mr. Caravello will then call the roll, and the board members should state the name of the candidate who they are supporting to fill the open seat. And per policy, the candidate needs to receive 5 votes to be appointed to the seat. If there's 3 people nominated and no one person gets 5 votes, we'll drop off the lowest vote getter and vote again on the 2 highest vote getters, and we'll keep trying. If we hopefully can come to a decision tonight, and if not, the board can always repost the vacancy. We have 65 days by law to fill it, so we can try again. If we are not successful tonight, hopefully we'll be successful tonight. And so that's the process. Do any of the members have any questions? Nope. Okay.
And just to kick it off before we open the nominations, we're going to start with roll call.
Mrs. Bellomo?
Here.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Here.
Mr. Hyatt?
Here.
Mr. Lolansky?
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Here.
Mr. Petruno?
Here.
Mrs. Seward?
Here.
And Mrs. Mendez?
Here. Okay, so I'm now going to open up to nominations. So if anybody wants to name somebody that they're nominating. Aldo?
I'll nominate Ashley McCormack.
Thank you. Is there a second for Ashley? Michael? Thank you. Any other nominations?
I wanted to nominate Nirav Kadakia. I think his answers were great.
We'll
Again, they were.
the discussion on the,
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll get back to that. Thank
That
you.
needs a second.
So does anybody second Narav?
I second Narav.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Okay. Make a motion to close the nominations. I need a second. Annette? Any discussion? Roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. And then they can speak about what they want, right? So, I'm sorry, we're just going to now take roll call, and you're going to say the name of the person that you're supporting, and at that point in time, you can say why you're supporting them, okay?
Okay. Mrs. Bellomo?
Ashley McCormack. I'm supporting Ashley because of her involvement both in the Board of Education as well as the schools. Just being a mom and being so involved as a volunteer and serving this community is paramount when it comes to knowing what's best for our children. She is a perfect example of what being involved is, and to me that is extremely important. With that being said, I really also thought that Mr. Pollack did a great job tonight. His emphasis on conflict resolution was excellent. I've seen him involved in the schools and just recently coming to the Board of Education, and I'm so happy to continue to see him here in the last couple of months. So hopefully, if there's opportunities in the future, you'll keep coming out and continue to be involved in the community.
Thank you. Mrs. Gandhi?
Well, first I want to thank everyone for coming. It's not easy to be out in the public like this and do an interview. I think every candidate did a really great job. It was hard. It was hard to pick. We got some excellent submissions that showcase remarkable pool of highly educated and accomplished professionals. You know, some have current experience on several educational boards, and some with degrees from, you know, esteemed universities. So two things: who I want to vote for, and I guess so. I nominated Narav again because he has been in the community for a really long time. He has 2 young children. He came with some really great strategies and reasons, especially when the financial question was asked, budgeting, which is critical for our district. And he came up with some really great answers. Brian Cohen was amazing as well, and it was so difficult because I would have wanted to put him forward as well, and same thing with Adam. I mean, you know, you don't have to just be a PTO mom, you could be a PTO dad too and do so much, and he was incredible. Again, a lot of experiences managing a lot of budgets, but I did choose Nirav. And yeah, that's it.
Mr. Hyatt?
Does my mic work?
Yeah.
Finally. Yeah, again, thank you everyone for coming out. We got a lot of interest, which I am absolutely gratified for. I know it's a difficult thing to do, to stand up here and put yourself out in the public. I am voting for Nirav. That said, I think of all the candidates, he was very authentic. I think for his passion for the community, his passion for education, his volunteerism, his knowledge about the issues, I thought was perfect for this board, and he's going to add some diversity to our thinking, I believe. That said, it was tough. Between him, Adam, and Brian and Adam, you both blew me away with your professional experience, your knowledge of the education system, and I think your general passion towards Marlboro in general. So I hope you both continue to stay involved, because I was thoroughly impressed. But my vote will go to Nirav. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lalansky?
As well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. It's not easy standing up there. It's not easy putting your name in, coming out before the whole community. I think everybody did a great job interviewing. As Chad said, there was a lot of choices here to take. I count heavily the involvement and the passion in the district. I've only missed one meeting since 2020. It shows me that Ashley McCormick has the passion to be on this board. So Ashley is my vote. I encourage you all, though, to put your names out when it comes election season, because there's some great qualified other candidates out there, and I'd like to see some others try to run again for the board. Thank you.
Dr. Miskowitz?
My vote is for Nirav as well. And Nirav, you did an exceptional job of being authentic. You were such a people person. I loved all of your information about how you could help us with technology and bringing AI into the schools for a useful purpose. But in the same vein, I tell you, it was really hard because Brian, you blew me away. You blew me away. I looked at your resume, I was waiting to hear what you had to say. And you too, you were amazing. I hope you will consider running for November. And same thing with Adam. Adam, the first time I saw you was at the community chat. And I thought, wow, that man needs to be on the Board of Ed. And then I saw your resume and I heard you today. And I wish I could vote for 3 people because I would do that.
Mr. Petruno?
Yeah, first off, I wanted to thank everyone for coming out. I really never expected 8 applicants to put in for this spot. So seeing that kind of interest from the community, it's really nice to see. I hope that it continues, and I would really hope you know, I encourage everyone to keep coming. With that, you know, I did nominate Ashley, and my vote's going to be for her. Thank you.
Mrs. Seward?
Just to piggyback on my board members, I also would like to thank everyone for coming out. Just want to take a moment to recognize Miss Crystal, Mrs. Laurie, and Miss Scorzo. You all spend your day in and out in the education system, and you're still willing to volunteer your own personal time to do this. So I really think that we had some outstanding candidates tonight, and I just wanted to reiterate how grateful I am for your interest. Although this takes up a lot of your time, it also is very rewarding. So please don't be discouraged for tonight's results. I really hope that you all stay involved and stay committed to the big picture. I am voting for Mrs. McCormack.
Okay, Mrs. Mendez?
Yeah, so I wanted to thank everybody. Again, I know it wasn't easy. A couple of candidates that stood out to me. I want to thank everybody, but Mr. Pollack, you had some really great answers, and I was really just, moved by some of your responses, and I loved the community involvement. That's something, the resumes are really important too, but community involvement, this is a full-time, half-time gig, and so I appreciate when people are super involved in the community too. That means a lot. So thank you, Mr. Pollack. Narav, your answers were truly, not that anybody's wasn't, but your answers stood out to me too. I just appreciated the, your authenticity, and your responses were something I took to heart. Plus, I know that you're involved in the community. I know a lot of people are involved in the community that came up. Your answers stood out to me, so thank you. Ms. Scorzo, I know that you recently ran in the election, and so I appreciate you coming out and showing your passion for the board. I know you've been coming to the meetings also, so I thank you for being here. I thank all of you. You all have, great resumes and backgrounds. My vote, though, is for Ashley McCormack. She has shown a level of dedication, support, and I know everybody has been dedicated to this community in one way or another. But, coming here, is just is a big thing, and I know Ms. McCormack stated she's involved in the community in different boards at Abbott and Robertsville and so forth, and I know other people do other things, but my vote is for Mrs. McCormack.
Yep. Okay, so that is 8 votes, and that is 5 votes for Miss Ashley McCormack, and then 3 votes for Narav. I apologize if I can't pronounce your last name, but so we have 5 votes for Ashley, so the motion passes to nominate Ashley as the 9th member of the board.
Congratulations, Mrs. McCormack. Mrs. McCormack, you're going to get sworn in at the end of the meeting because you'd have to abstain from everything anyway, so it will happen at the end. Okay. Organization matters. So I read that right? Yeah. Do I read it? Yeah. Okay. So, Michael Bolonsky, organization matters. Is that the swearing in?
Okay.
Oh, forget it, Michael. We're going to move that to the end. Okay. All right, so financial and business operations matters, Michael. We'll do it after.
Good.
Go ahead.
Financial and business operations matters. Superintendent of Schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, harassment, imitation, bullying, HIB report. I so move.
Second. Can I have a second? Any discussion? Roll call. Oh, Danielle.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your
Thank
hand. I
you.
thought it was Danielle. I'm sorry. Aldo was the
Okay.
second.
Roll call vote, Mrs. Seward? Yes. Mrs. Balomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mr. Lalansky?
Yes.
And And Mrs. Mendez?
Yes. Personnel matters, Aditi?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolution for approval. Employment instructional assistance, policy development and community relations matter. 1, amended 2023-2024 school year calendar. Roll call. I so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. Miskowitz? Roll call?
Sure. Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes, but can we just discuss it briefly? We didn't have
Yeah.
a discussion.
All right, so we're going to redo roll call vote
Can
because
we
there wants
discuss
to be a
this
discussion
briefly? I
on
just
it.
wanted the amended calendar. I just
Oh,
want to
yes.
discuss, so President's Day is turned to a one-session day. I'm wondering what the percentage of student population needs to be in the building for it to account for an official day. Is that something that you know off the top of your head?
I don't have the percentage off the top of my head. What we did, we made it a one-session day to sort of meet in the middle, honor the President's Day holiday, but also we know full well that we have to make up the day for students to be in for 180 days. So, but I can get you the percentage.
Thanks. I just wanted to.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes, but I'll be skiing.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Hang on, just a point of clarification, sorry. What's the issue?
Is something on the agenda. Can you?
Mike, is your mic on?
Personnel is usually separate from policy development. We're missing the
on
vote
the-
in between the two of them that we normally have. We don't usually vote on personnel and policy at the same time.
Correct. Aditi, that wasn't anything you read. There was a piece missing on the
There's a
agenda.
piece missing on the agenda.
Yeah.
So we're just going to separate. So you read personnel matters, and then we're going to take the second, the motion, and then the vote, and then we're going to go to policy development, okay? You didn't read anything wrong, it
No,
just
you
wasn't
didn't
there.
read
So we're just going to do the
It's not
personnel
just
first.
So we're just doing personnel matters, then you
Yeah.
say I so move, and then we'll do that, okay?
Do it over again.
Just read the personnel, yeah.
Just say personnel matter.
Personnel matters. I do so.
1, employment.
Just read the heading.
Just read the heading.
Sure.
Employment.
1, employment instructional assistance.
I so move.
I so move.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
Thank you, Dr. Miskowitz. Roll call? I'm
Okay,
sorry,
roll.
discussion on that? No? Okay. Roll call?
Okay, roll call vote on personnel. Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lolansky?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mendez?
Yes. Policy development and community relations matters, Annette?
The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, amended 2023-2024 school year calendar. I so move.
Second? Michael? Discussion? Annette, I think you were discussing the date, right?
Yeah, I just, to reiterate, I was wondering what the percentage of student attendance needs to be in the buildings in order to validate as a school day. But Michael's going to get back to me with that information.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. Roll call?
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lolansky?
Yes.
Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mendez?
Yes. We're now going to move on to the Code of Ethics presentation that Mr. Zittimer is going to present, and then we'll move to old business. So what we're going to do is we're going to swear Mrs. McCormack in so that she can be part of the ethics presentation and sign off on it. So then you get that piece completed. So Mrs. McCormack, if you can come up to the mic.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, congratulations. Can you please raise your right hand? Okay, please repeat after me. I, please state your name,
I, Ashley McCormack,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments
and to the governments
established in the United States
established in the United States
and this state
and this state
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I, please state your name,
I, Ashley McCormack,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
that I possess the qualifications prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of member of Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to
pursuant to
RS
RS
19 semicolon
19 semicolon
4-1,
4-1,
nor disqualified
nor
due-
disqualified
oops, due to conviction of a crime or offense
due to conviction of a crime or offense
listed in NJS
listed in NJS
18A
18A
semicolon
semicolon
12-1,
12-1,
and that I will faithfully,
and that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties of that office
perform all the duties of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Ms. McCormack.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to turn over to Mr. Zittimer for the Code of Ethics for Board Members presentation.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to talk this evening about the New Jersey School Ethics Act, and we postponed last night because of the lateness of the hour, and I'm going to move it along a little more quickly than I might ordinarily move it along just because of the lateness of the hour as well. Is there a remote for this PowerPoint by any chance? Do you guys have a remote? Thank you. So, again, members of the board, members of the administration, members of the community, I'm going to discuss the New Jersey School Ethics Act. And the New Jersey School Ethics Act is a law in the state of New Jersey that governs essentially the ethical do's and don'ts for school officials. And I'll talk in a second about who is a school official covered by the New Jersey School Ethics Act. The preamble to the School Ethics Act really sums it up very nicely, and it says that in our representative form of government, it's essential that members of boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people. Officials must avoid conduct which is in violation of the public trust or which creates a justifiable impression among the public that such trust is being violated. What does all that mean? It means that the public has to have confidence that when you vote, when you act on matters, when you discuss matters, you're acting in the interest of the Marlboro School District and not in your own personal, financial, or business interest. You're here for the kids, and that's really what that means. And I always tell board members, not only do you have to avoid actual conflicts of interest, but you have to avoid the appearance of impropriety. If something doesn't pass the smell test, if there's going to be some question or doubt about why you're acting in a particular way, it's best to recuse, step back, abstain, and of course, you can always ask my legal opinion about these issues, and I've read a lot of these cases, and I have a pretty good handle on the Ethics Act and the cases that have construed it. So New Jersey law requires that we discuss the Ethics Act at a meeting, so we're going to be able to check that box. Who does the School Ethics Act apply to? And it looks like my graphics kind of got enlarged for some reason. But who does the Ethics Act apply to? Of course, it applies to Board of Education members. It also applies to school administrators, the superintendent, the BA, assistant superintendent, and so forth. It also applies to school officials from the New Jersey School Boards Association. So within the School Ethics Act, we essentially have two parts. We've got the, and I handed it out to everybody tonight, we've got the prohibited acts. Those are the sections that deal with conflicts of interest. They essentially say that board members shouldn't act in any manner in which you have a direct or indirect personal or financial involvement that could somehow impair your objectivity. You can't vote on matters where you have a conflict. That's essentially what that means. And then we have the Code of Ethics, which I also handed out tonight. The Code of Ethics only applies to Board of Education members. It does not apply to school administrators. So let's walk through the various provisions of the Code of Ethics, okay? Section A, you will uphold and enforce all rules and regulations of the State Board of Education. Court orders pertaining to the schools essentially means you're going to follow the law. That's what Section A means, pretty cut and dry. Section B, making decisions in terms of the educational welfare of all children. You're here for all the kids, regardless of race, religion, creed, national origin, and so forth. That's what Section B refers to. Section C really defines what it is to be a Board of Education member. You are a policy-making body. You set policy for the school district, the rules and regulations that guide the school district. We use a company which provides us with a template, if you will, but we have a very active policy committee. We really get into the weeds on these policies, and we tailor them to the best of our ability to meet the needs of the Marlboro School District. It says that you're supposed to frame policies and plans after the board has consulted by those who are affected by them. As you know, we have 2 readings on every policy. That means that every member of the community has a right at our meetings to get up and give their input, and we take that input. We often use that input to shape these policies, and you'll notice that when we have a first reading, it's not always identical to the reading that we have on second reading because we take that input from the community, which we find very valuable. So again, policy, setting policy, planning for the future of the district, setting goals for the district, setting goals for the board, and appraisal, taking a step back and saying, how are we doing? Where could we do better? What are our aims for this year and next year and so forth? Section D, I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. You are not an administrative body. You have a wonderful administration that runs the day-to-day operations of the school district. Your job is not to run the district, but to see that it is well run. That's the function of a board member. And if you look at the cases from the School Ethics Commission and what the code says somebody would have to prove to show a violation, it's that board members became involved in the day-to-day operations of the school district. That is a big no-no. There's always a case that kind of stands out in my mind. It's called In the Matter of Lawn. It's from the Delsey Board of Education from a while ago, where a board member decided to take it upon himself to go into the schools. And he started asking the guidance secretaries for copies of SAT reports. He then proceeds down to the locker room. This is in the middle of the school day. In the locker room, starts instructing the PE teachers on how they could do a better job supervising the kids in class that day. He then decides to do an inspection of the locker rooms. And somebody got wind of this and say, said, hey, you're not supposed to be doing all these things. That is the function of the administration. You're not supposed to be in the schools, interacting with the staff, and giving orders, essentially, to our personnel. That is a clear violation. That is administrative function in nature. We interact with the staff, and usually we do that through the work on our various committees, but you have to remember, as a board member, you're always wearing that hat. The community, the teachers, the staff, they always see you as a board member. And I'm not saying you can't speak to staff, of course, to advocate on behalf of your own child or meet with the staff in those contexts, but you also have to be careful about how you are seen by the administration and the staff in your capacity as a Board of Education member. So next, you're going to recognize your authority rests with the board, and you're not going to make personal promises or take private action that could compromise the board. You have the authority to act when you're sitting here at the dais. You don't have the authority to act outside this room, essentially. You're not supposed to be doing your own investigations, taking private action. You work through the board as a whole in your meetings or through your committees. Section F, you're supposed to refuse to surrender your independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or use the schools, for personal gain or the gain of friends. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Does that mean you can't advocate on behalf of certain groups? You're a special ed parent, you want to advocate for special ed students? Absolutely, that's perfectly acceptable. The key words are surrendering your independent judgment, such that you've kind of lost all objectivity in how you handle the matter. Confidentiality, I've talked to the board about confidentiality. It's one of the most important provisions, in my opinion, of the Code of Ethics. You come across a lot of confidential information. We had confidential discussions this evening in closed session. Everything that we discussed that's confidential has to stay confidential, because it really undermines the board's ability to function well if folks on the board don't have confidence that what's discussed in closed session, for instance, or what we get through our emails from the administration remains confidential. It must remain confidential. And your family members, your friends, your spouses, they are not subject to the ethics. You are. So sharing information with other parties who you trust is still a violation. Oh, and the other part of that, that I wanted to mention is the code says you have to provide accurate information. And we're going to talk about the First Amendment rights of board members in a second. You have a right to speak. You have a right to express your opinions. But what the Code of Ethics says, that if you're speaking about board-related issues, you have to make sure that you're saying things that are accurate, that are truthful, that are correct. So you can't say in the community, I'm not voting for the budget this year because we're adding 10 new administrative positions, if the reality is we're only adding 2 administrative positions. That's not accurate. That would be an ethics violation. So make sure that when you speak about board issues that you're providing correct and accurate information. If there's ever a question, you can certainly ask the administration or the board president, and we will make sure that what you're saying is correct. Section H, the board appoints personnel only upon the recommendation of the superintendent. The board cannot appoint staff without Mr. Ballone's recommendation. And you're supposed to appoint the best qualified person after considering Mr. Ballone's recommendation. There's another section of the law that says you're not supposed to actually withhold your approval of the superintendent's recommendations for arbitrary and capricious reasons. In other words, you're generally, and I don't say that you are a rubber stamp, but you're generally supposed to support personnel recommendations by the administrators who meet with the candidates, interview the candidates, and vet the candidates, and you're not supposed to withhold that approval unless you have a really legitimate, well-reasoned decision for doing so, or rationale, I should say, for doing so. Section I, supporting and protecting school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. And this kind of goes to what I was just talking about. Again, the code talks about the fact, what would somebody have to show to show somebody violated that particular provision? They'd have to show that somebody took deliberate action which resulted in undermining, opposing, compromising, or harming school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. You're not allowed to publicly evaluate your staff, for instance. You're not allowed to say negative things about your staff publicly. That would be a violation of Section I. Section J is an important provision, and I like this provision a lot for board members. To me, this is the provision that allows you, when you're at the local supermarket, to punt when a parent comes up to you and says, you're on the Board of Education, my child's teacher is giving too much homework, I want you to handle this complaint. No, what you're supposed to say is, I'd like to refer that to Mr. Ballone. He will handle the complaint. You are not supposed to handle and deal with complaints and concerns on your own. There's nothing wrong with referring somebody to the chain of command and saying, hey, have you spoken to your child's teacher first? Did you go to the principal? Did you speak to Mr. Ballone? Or I will bring the concern to Mr. Ballone. The point is, you as a board member are not supposed to be handling these complaints on your own. So,
if somebody believes that somebody violated anything that I just talked about, who can file a complaint? And the answer is that anybody can file a complaint. There is a 6-month statute of limitations to file that complaint. In other words, the complaint has to be filed within 6 months of the occurrence of the event. The School Ethics Commission is the only entity in the state. They are under the Department of Education that can decide whether a board member's conduct violated the act. I can certainly give an opinion, but they're the final arbiter of the issue. And you can request an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission. So if there's a question about a proposed course of conduct by you or somebody else, we can write a letter to the School Ethics Commission and they will render an opinion for us about the proposed course of action. I can also, as board counsel, give you an opinion, but their opinion holds more weight than I do because they're going to be, like I said, the final judge of these matters. You know, I had a situation in a district that I represent where a senior high school student got elected to the Board of Education. It was kind of a unique situation, and the board said to me, Mark, can the board member, who's a student, literally a 18-year-old student, can he vote on his teachers? Can he vote on his classmates on all these issues? And I said, you know something? I don't often go to the School Ethics Commission for an advisory opinion, but this is one of those situations where we really need to get some clarity. And we wrote to them, and they gave us a very nice opinion detailing the do's and don'ts for that particular board member. So that was interesting.
And what was the result?
Believe it or not, they allowed the student to vote and involve himself in a lot more than I thought they would, that he can vote on personnel, he can vote on student matters. There were very few limitations, believe it or not, on what they imposed, which is kind of the opposite of what I thought they were going to say. I thought they were going to basically say that he was going to have to abstain and recuse himself on pretty much everything for the period of time between the time he got sworn in January and the time he graduated. He was basically only a student and a board member for 6 months because after that he had graduated but continued. He was a very good board member. So what are the sanctions for violating the act? You got at the lightest end of the spectrum a reprimand, which is kind of a written letter from the School Ethics Commission. It's a slap on the wrist. A censure is a resolution read at a public meeting. It has to be posted in the places where the board typically posts its notices and so forth. Suspension obviously is removal from the board for a set period of time, and then removal is permanently being removed from the Board of Education in the most egregious cases. Can you file an ethics case against somebody who's no longer on the board? What do you think? Anyone want to guess? What do you think, Aldo? There you go. As long as it's within the 6-month period of time, you can still file an ethics charge against somebody. Now, suspension and removal is not going to be an option, but it can be done. So let's talk about board member social media, First Amendment issues. This comes up a lot. Can board members post on social media? Can they write letters to the newspapers? Can they speak? Yes, the answer is you don't lose your First Amendment rights by virtue of having been sworn in as a board member. You have to provide accurate information. I talked about that. You can't disclose confidential information. I talked about that. You can't disclose information which could compromise the Board of Education, and you can't publicly evaluate staff. Other than that, you have a lot of latitude in what you say. However, what the School Ethics Commission says is that in any communication, whether it's on social media, Twitter, or X, whatever it is now, where your affiliation with the board is generally going to be recognized and it pertains to a school district matter, you need to have a disclaimer. You need to say that you're speaking as an individual citizen and that you're not speaking for the Board of Education unless, of course, you've been authorized to speak for the Board of Education. So you need to say that the following statements are made by me in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a member of the board. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinion. So if you'd like to post, make sure you have this disclaimer, making it very clear to the public that you're speaking as an individual citizen, not on behalf of the Board of Education. Okay. So every year, you know, I like to kind of go through some of the latest and greatest cases from the School Ethics Commission and want to get you to offer your opinions about whether you think some of these things were violations. So this is actually a school district that I represent. So the question is, did a Board of Education member violate D and E? So D in front of you here is the section that says, you will carry out your responsibilities not to administer the schools, but together with your fellow board members, see they're well run. Oh, sorry. Yep. And then you've got section E, recognizing your authority rests with the board and not making personal promises or taking private action that could compromise the board. So here's the situation. We have a board member. She's a member of UNICO. UNICO is the Italian-American organization in town. The board member is rather upset because she finds out that the school's choir is not going to be performing this year at the Columbus Day event. So in the past, the school choir had come to Unico's Columbus Day event, and they sang. She got very upset about it, the board member, that is, and she decides to start interrogating the teacher through an email chain saying, how come you're not coming this year? This is horrible. The teacher responds to the board member and says, you know, the principal made the decision for whatever reason that we're not going to be performing. And she continues to interrogate the teacher about the principal's directive, basically saying it was a bad decision and so on and so forth. So in your opinion, do you think this was a violation of the Code of Ethic provisions about private action that could compromise the board administering the schools? What do you think? True or false? You could just yell out.
True.
True. True. It was true. And my slides are not working. They're supposed to get larger there. For some reason, the formatting's not working today. But the answer is true. The School Ethics Commission said, look, she put this teacher in a very horrible situation between the principal, she's a board member, she should have worked through the superintendent of schools. It was totally improper. How about this one? A board member violated Section B and C of the Act. This is the conflicts of interest section, dealing with matters where you have a conflict, using your position as a board member for your own advantage. When she attended an executive session of the board while her husband's candidate was for an open seat was being discussed. So picture tonight, we have one of you whose spouse applied for the open seat. Of course, that didn't happen. Would you be required to step out of the room when your husband's candidacy was being discussed, or wife? Yeah. What would you say?
True.
True, absolutely. This board member sat in on that discussion, and they said, look, she had a privileged advantage. Nobody else in the community got to sit in on their spouse's discussions about the deliberations. This board member clearly had a conflict. Her husband was running for the board. She should have stepped out of the room when her husband's candidacy was being discussed. How about this one? A board member violated Section E and G, and E is recognizing your authority rests with the board, and G is holding confidential all matters pertaining to the schools. So the superintendent emails the entire board, and you'll see that Mr. Ballone from time to time will email the board. This board member then, and he basically says to the board, hey, guess what? I've got some good news. The NFL may be using our football stadium for some event that they're having, and the board member then takes it upon himself to forward that email to the town council and the mayor. Without authorization, without telling anybody, before the event had been finalized or anything like that, it wasn't public. Do you think that was a violation of confidentiality? Yeah. Clear violation. It caused a lot of problems. And it was the NFL, exactly. How about this one? There's lots of ethics cases dealing with board members who are teachers in other districts. And what are the limitations on board members who are NJEA in other districts? So this is a true or false. A board member who's a teacher in another district and a member of the NJEA can participate in negotiations with the teachers in the district where he or she is a board member once there's a memorandum of agreement and salary guides. A memorandum of agreement is basically the final stage of negotiations where it's basically just put down in writing. So hypothetically, if you're a teacher in another district and a board member in Marlboro, can you be on the Marlboro teachers negotiations? What do you think? Is it true that you can do that once there's an MOA with guides? What do you think, true or false? You are correct. Your first correct answer is a board member. The answer is true. Once there's a memorandum of agreement with salary guides, you believe it or not, the School Ethics Commission says you can fully participate. They see it as the process is pretty much done at that point. Mm-hmm. You've got the memorandum of agreement, the salary guides as to who's getting money is all sorted out already, and they say that you can vote. How about this one? A board member violated C and E of the Code of Ethics. C is that you're a policy-making body, and E is recognizing your authority rests with the board and not making personal promises or taking private action that could compromise the board. So did a board member violate those sections when she emailed vendors falsely claiming that she was reaching out on behalf of the board? She requested prices on Chromebooks from all these vendors. She then decides to poll business administrators in other school districts asking about their experiences with the Chromebook devices. Do you think the board member overstepped her bounds in that particular case? Yes, clearly that was a true. How about this one? Interesting. A board member whose spouse is a member of the council would violate Section C of the Act. That's the section that says you shouldn't act in a manner where you have a direct or indirect personal or financial matter, where she voted on a shared services agreement, or asked whether she could vote, on a shared services agreement between the board and the township to employ an SRO. So board and township are doing a shared service. They're going to have an SRO. There's an agreement between the board and the township. Her husband's a council person. Should she have recused herself, or should she recuse herself from that discussion? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes, she should have abstained. Her husband's an SRO. It's an agreement between the two entities and so forth. How about this one? A board member violated section A, D, and F of the code. So A is upholding laws and regulations of the board, of the state, I should say. Section D is carrying out your responsibility not to administer the schools. And F is refusing to surrender your independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups when the unnamed board member voted no on a motion to approve the health and PE curriculum, resulting in a tie vote because they had, I think, 8 members on the board at the time. The board, when there's a tie vote, the motion doesn't carry, and it basically left the district out of compliance with the New Jersey student learning standards. Do you think it was a violation for the board member to vote no to the curriculum? What do you think? It's an interesting one. No. You say no. Does anybody think it was a violation? Not a violation. You're correct. They said, look, board members vote on issues all the time. If we're going to find board members in violation because of the way they vote, whether it's yes or no, there's going to be a lot of ethics cases in this state. And so ultimately they had to solve the problem of not having a curriculum. I think they brought it up at a future meeting, but voting no on the curriculum was not an ethics violation. How about this? This one always kind of makes me chuckle. A board member violated the code of ethics when he commented on Facebook, now if we could do something about our local terrorist that destroys dreams and burns futures, and then the superintendent's picture was linked to the posting. Is that a problem in anybody's opinion? Mr. Ballone, what do you think of that one? You think it's a problem? That's a problem. That was certainly a problem. We talked about supporting and protecting school personnel. Calling your superintendent a terrorist on Facebook is generally not a good idea. Yes.
Mark, I have a question. What if he used his disclaimer?
Yeah, that's a great, fabulous question. What if he used his disclaimer? That's a great question. So what the School Ethics Commission says is, and I should have said this before, I'm glad you brought that up, using the disclaimer in and of itself does not give you, like, you know, a bulletproof shield to say and do whatever you want. And so I don't think that if he had a disclaimer saying these are my own personal opinions, he would have been out of the woods in this case. So thank you for bringing that up. The disclaimer does not shield you from everything.
And
Yes.
didn't you say that it has to be true anyway?
Good point. He's not a terrorist, so it's
yeah.
not accurate either. I didn't even think of that part. But yes, it's not supporting and protecting school personnel, and it's not an accurate statement either. That's a good point. So yes, stay away from calling your superintendent a terrorist on Facebook. Not a good idea. Does anybody have any questions about anything I talked about this evening? Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you, and you know where to find me if any questions come up along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zittimer. Appreciate it. Super informative. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Caravello is going to present some budget information.
Mark, it was Tim Tian. That's, yes, yeah, he was raving about you.
Okay.
He was raving.
Good evening, everybody. This is the closest we're going to get to having a night class like we used to in college, so bear with me. So this is our third discussion on the 24-25 budget. So tonight we're really just going to highlight revenues. We're going to go over the curriculum department and the special ed department budgets. The reason I want to highlight revenues with this is just to really start giving you guys an overall picture of both sides of the coin. So the source of revenues that we're estimating are about a little over 99 million, most of that coming from the local tax levy. So you can see the makeup on the right side of percentages of the total budget of the 99 million and how much that accounts for. So really your biggest piece, like always, is your local tax levy at about 86%, teetering at about 86.5%. And then the other makeup is state aid. State aid has been, as we all know, reduced over the years. So right now that makes up about 7.3% of the total budget, which gives you about 93% of the budget just comprised of state aid and local tax levy. Now you have your maintenance reserve and your capital reserve. When we present the building and grounds department budget at the next meeting, we'll go into detail of exactly what those amounts equate to. Really, the capital reserve amount is really just for the Marl HVAC project. That's the portion that we need to budget for. Maintenance reserve is comprised of a bunch of other projects that we'll get into detail with. Extraordinary aid is up from the previous year, mainly because we have a little bit more out-of-district placements that we're going to be able to submit for, so we're anticipating that we'll be able to receive more funding for that. Tuition. So tuition is down a little, and we'll get into detail later on in the presentation of why tuition is a little bit down. But rentals and interest earnings are rentals and semi and miscellaneous income are around the same and budgeted flat as they were the previous year. Interest earning has skyrocketed from the previous year due to the amount of interest we've been accruing in our accounts. So we feel safe to budget such a larger amount than we had in previous years. So I think this year we're anticipating on exceeding over about 500,000, right? So this was a safe number to go with, depending if it fluctuates or goes back down. Your student activity fees, again, stayed flat from the previous year. And then your budgeted fund balance, which is made up of your excess surplus and the unbudgeted fund balance that you utilize from the budget from the previous year. So some of the interesting information that usually comes up. So usually the state of New Jersey classifies districts based on their socioeconomic status. So you can only go from A to J, J being the most affluent. So Marlboro is considered an I district, which really means that when you're I or J, they really put the bearing on the local taxpayers and basically saying that the way we use to calculate your state aid funding is we base it off of those letterings, and your taxpayers' ability to pay is how we determine if you should lose state aid or gain state aid. And really that's how it's predicated on adequacy as well. Just a note here, we are proposing to use the bank cap that we had left over from last year, and I'll get into that later on as well. It's really just to really sacrifice not making so many additional cuts that we can't live without, because we're getting into levels where if we don't start utilizing the tax base and going up to the full 2%, we are going to have to make massive cuts when it comes to staffing and programs, and we really just try to protect the class sizes and basically the product in which we serve here, and that's why people have come up to the mic and talked about why they move here and why they want to come and be ingrained in Marlboro is really the kind of education they get here. So we try our best to look at everything and not really sacrifice those things of why they come here. One of the other things that has not been added into tonight is, so the $1 million is predicated off of the health waiver that we did not take fully last year, and that's in the form of bank cap now. Now, bank cap is not just some, money that's on layaway that we can utilize, and it's just money we can just add back into the budget. That is solely based on putting it on the tax base. So you're basically increasing the tax base above the 2% by utilizing what was left over from previous years. So it's not just like money we can just add in the budget. It has no effect on taxes. It does. The additional waiver that they're giving for this year's health increase is $205,000. That's basically based off of the increase that they're expecting and our costs for health care, and then they calculate what they think we should get as a waiver. So there's an additional $205 there as well for the taking if we needed to.
Sorry. It says sources of revenue, but what is rental, semi, and miscellaneous? What is that?
Yeah, so semi program is the Special Education Medicaid Initiative, and so any of those students that usually qualify for those services, we go through the state for reimbursement for those services, right? And then rentals is really just rental income from renting out our facilities. We budget for that. Miscellaneous income can be comprised of, I think it's play admissions and other miscellaneous income. Like last year, one of the larger parts of our miscellaneous income was the sale of that building on Tenant Road. So just things that may not make up the regular revenues that we account for. Does anybody have any questions? Because you can jump in whenever you feel like it. You don't need to wait till the end. Okay, so like I was talking about with the bank cap of $1 million and the health benefit waiver of the 205. So right now, as it stands, our recommendation is to utilize all of it, and here's why, a couple of reasons. Our negotiated agreements that we have put in place are about 3.5%. We still have 2 collective bargaining units coming at the end of this year, which we're going to have to negotiate for. As we all know, salaries from the previous year, make up most of the budget. So right now we're looking at about 62% of the total budget made up of salaries. Another one is health benefits. You are looking at a 12% increase in health benefits for the 24-25 school year. And again, that's about 20% of your total budget. So right there, it's 81% of your expenses or your appropriations are salaries and benefits. So in the only way you are going to be able to not take bank cap and not go to 2%, well, you have to go to 2% to even think about taking the bank cap. But if you don't take that stuff, then you're looking at a shortfall where you would have to make some substantial changes, and that would be to programs and to staff. So we're trying to eliminate having to do that by proposing utilizing what's there for the taking. And it's really not just filling in holes, it's really just building your tax base without having to sacrifice anything that you have really put in place. Because we did make a lot of substantial cuts last year, a little bit over $1 million. One of the other things that we want to discuss was the out-of-district tuition. So it increased by $300,000, and the charter school tuition also increased by another $30,000. So that's something that we have to take into account for. Transportation contract costs are at the CPI, which is that 5.86%, and they all go up to it. They never go under it. And then the costs that were paid out of the ESSER funds. Now, we did a very good job trying not to really put revolving costs into the ESSER funds unless we really had no choice, because that's what the specific use of that sub-grant or that grant was. So we never really wanted to put staffing salaries in there. We never really wanted to put any additional new staff in there, because we eventually knew this day was going to come where they weren't going to be there anymore, and you were going to have to pull back and cut. So one of the things that stands out is the ESY program. That made up about $330,000 last year. So now we have to assimilate that back into the operating budget. So that is why you're looking at such a, interesting gap where now you're starting to take things from a different pot and put it back to where it was. Another thing is, I believe, Chromebooks need to be funded again. We did that through the stabilization aid grant last year. And I think there was one other thing too, right? There was, oh yes, a lot of the online programs we were able to do through ESSER 3, those had to actually come back in the budget now. Now we did evaluate all of the programs, and Mrs. Gross will attest to that. We scaled back anything that we thought that may have not been a need, or maybe put more on the school level, but we really took a look at all of that stuff just to see what we could live without and what we couldn't. And then we were able to scale back on that just a tad bit, but not enough to really make up to where, we didn't feel the impact of it coming back in. So that's why we are recommending this right now. Again, we actually just did this last week. We reviewed all the budgets that came in, line by line. You'll see some reductions in the actual budgets for curriculum and special ed. That is really because we did take a team effort look at going through each budget line by line and really seeing if there was, again, I like to use this word, a need or a want, because we actually did know we needed to achieve, to get to a number to minimize that gap without really having to make any significant cuts, but also keeping in mind to utilize the, the bank cap and the waivers that have been presented with us to try to keep this whole. So we were looking at supplies, services, projects, any open positions, just to really see if we can live without not filling them, live with filling them, any programs we can live without, any supplies that we really may not need this year that we could cut out, just to try to, close that gap a little bit.
And Vinny, one thing I just appreciate you saying is just being mindful that last year it was really important to us, and this year, that we don't impact the students directly and we keep the class sizes, as low as they can be. So I appreciate you putting that there.
Yeah, we wanted to bring this to everybody's attention now, because it's unfair to wait until the 11th hour and try to, shove everything in, or try to cut things with sweeping the rug out of everybody. So it's we just wanted to really just go over what we're thinking, what we're seeing. I didn't want you to think that, hey, we're just going to 2%, we're taking the bank cap, we're taking everything just because I want to have, you know, an abundance of money and just be able to use it how I see freely. No, there actually is a fiscal cliff that is coming that, you know, we can't keep up with the rising costs when we're only just given the 2%, especially when health benefits are going to go anywhere from 11 to 15% every year. And I think the county average on salaries now is upwards of 4 or close to it. So we just have to be mindful of that stuff while working in the 2% realm, which is very difficult. So now we're going to talk about the curriculum department budget. So these are some of the key highlights you'll see from over the years, 23-24 to 24-25. So there's an increase in textbooks of 13,000. I'll get to the detail in the next slides of why the variance is the way it is. Testing is down 18,000. Contracted online services is up 32,000. That's really just not from adding programs, but just the nominal increases that you see from year over year. Supplies and equipment are down 54,000. Curriculum writing is down 1,200. Professional development is down 2,900. And that gives you your total curriculum budget that actually is a decrease. Because again, we looked at it, we saw what we really didn't need, and we started to just trim it back or scale back without really sacrificing the integrity of the department budget.
How did testing get such a drop?
So we did eliminate, and Mrs. Gross can attest to it, I don't know exactly what Actively Learn is, but we did eliminate from the testing materials Actively Learn. So you'll see on this slide some of the accounts for why it decreased or increased. The textbooks increased mainly because we have to start upgrading our curriculum, mainly in maths grade through 1 through 4, and then science grades 6 through 8. Really what happens is the subscriptions over time become obsolete. You have to renew them. And then what we've actually been creative with doing is we've been working with some of our vendors to go on payment plans interest-free, which allows us to spread the payment of that total textbook replacement over time, whether it be 2 years or 3 years, just to give us some flexibility in the budget. The testing is primarily due to eliminating Actively Learn. Now, I'm not too specific with that program, but
it's a program that allowed students to, literally what it sounds like, they would read text and they'd be able to interact with it, highlighting and annotating, and some other features were involved with that. But just in the spirit of trying to balance tech with low tech or no tech instruction, we decided to take that out.
Thank you. And then contracted services increased because we thought about this a lot before Genesis was host-based, and then Genesis was basically hosted by us, and so we actually moved to their cloud-based hosting environment, which everything is controlled by them, monitored by them, and protected by them. And this kind of gives us some flexibility of just knowing or having some peace of mind that there are additional protections, and that is more fortified than if we actually hosted inside, and if we ever got into a jam, how we know what happened a couple weeks ago. So.
Are you like referencing what happened in Freehold recently? Is that basically what it would do?
Yes, I mean this was a thought of ours prior to that. We wanted to include it in here just to put an emphasis on it that we do take that stuff into consideration, and we look at that stuff all the time. So this is just another layer that we want to go forward with, so it doesn't cost us a lot more than, say, $32,000 of increases in over time if, God forbid, something were to happen. Supplies and equipment, a lot of those things were looked at by Mrs. Gross, and were shifted back to the building level. So anything that really didn't need to be included in the curriculum department, we told the buildings basically that they can budget for it if there was a need for it in their building. Curriculum writing, that changes all the time fluidly from year to year. It's an increase or decrease just really depending on need for what's needed for that school year. So you're looking at a slight decrease for that. Okay, next is the Special Services Department budget. So this is just a little snapshot from September 2022 to January of 2024. So you can see from starting with September of 2022, you can see the students who receive special education or related services. So it actually went from 745 to 724, now to 767. And then you'll see the total students of Marlboro in the second row, basically your total enrollment. What you could see the trend here, though, is that even though enrollment is staying flat or going down, the classification rates are going up. So there is a higher need for special education because we're seeing more kids come in based on evaluations and classifications that they may need services. And you could just see the percentage of how it's changed over time. But just note, like, I think we have, so it's okay, it says it. So currently we have 68 pending student referrals. So that number could increase by 68 if they do go all the way through and are fully classified. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no declassifications happening. There's always declassifications happening. But we're seeing a trend of just more students come in with needs. Some of the highlights of the special ed department budget, one of the big ones are the out-of-district students that we send out. Currently we have 21, actually we are projecting to have 21 students in 24-25. Currently we have about 14, so that's a projected increase of about 7. Now you're going to see in a later slide that the budget looks less because of this. You're going to say, well, there's more kids, why is it less? We're actually going to fund more tuition out of the IDEA grant than we have in the past, because we knew we weren't going to be able to afford fitting all of this into the budget. So we wanted to offset it by using our IDA grant that we get every year. Now we usually budget for tuition in that every year, we're just increasing the amount. We're going to go up one instructional assistant, and that's really due to changing student needs. You have a lot more students coming in that may need a one-to-one IA or may need another IA in the classroom. Just really depends on the IEP and the need of that student. We are establishing an emotional regulation impairment program in the district. This actually will allow us to bring students back in that we possibly send out of district. I think we're looking at about 2 students coming in. And what will happen over time is if this program is a success, you know, similar to other districts in the neighboring area, you'll be able to now have almost a revenue generator where you'll be able to bring kids from other districts into the program and we can charge tuition. So that would be, you know, a potential possibility of starting a program like this. And we have seen in other districts because we have actually sent some of our students to this type of program in other public school districts. Here's probably the big news of the night, and it's going to be unfavorable, but the integrated preschool program, so it did transition to full day in 23-24. For 24-25, there will only be 3 fully integrated sections. We have to increase the tuition program costs from a decent amount that's going to cover the cost of the actual program. So again, salaries have went up, the cost of the program has went up. We looked around neighboring areas to see what they were looking to charge in the 24-25 school year, and we are proposing to go up from $7,400 to $8,000. Now, it wouldn't change the payment plan, but we do have to increase the amount because our tuition revenue is going down because there's only going to be 30 spots instead of 40 spots now.
So I just want to say, I know not for now, right? I'm assuming we're going to vote on that.
Yeah, so you would have to vote on the
just because I
pricing.
remember we spent a lot of time trying to be fair to families, and I get what you're saying, right? The cost of staffing and all of that. So it's just a lot, and 7,400 already felt like a lot when we had those discussions, and now 8,000 feels like a lot for families. But I understand where you're coming from too. So
I know. We did our research. We did look at, you know, neighboring private schools. We looked at other public schools. I can tell you one public school in the area is going up to 12,000. Another one I think is going up to about 9,500 or 9,200. No, but what was the rate for last year for them? 8,500. And what was the private school around here that was? Because we tried not to exceed anybody that was in the neighboring area.
I think, and I think what was helpful for us last year would probably be the same, right? You showed the tuition of the neighboring.
We have that.
Town.
I just didn't bring.
And
it
you
with me
had. I don't
tonight.
need it right now. I think when we vote on it, because there were $10,000, and I know we were still on the lower end of it, just to kind of get a feel for that, because it is a burden for families too. But I get your point.
So again, this is just basically a breakdown of the key sections of the special ed department budget, and then showing you the decrease or increase variance over time. So out of district tuition looks like a decrease, actually is not. We're just funding more out of the IDA grant. The contracted online services have decreased by 17,000, but your consultants' evaluations have increased by 61. Your supplies and equipment have increased by 11. And then you can see the decreases to home instruction of about 8,000, curriculum writing for 4,500, and textbooks for 8,000, for a total budget decrease of 18,000. Now, that doesn't mean that you're taking anything away from special education. Does not mean that you're cutting any types of services. Does not mean that you're cutting really any levels of services that we have brought to you before or in this school year. So I want to put that notion in everybody's head that we're not cutting any like quality of service or anything for any student. It's just really taking a look at the budget, looking at what is needed, that may not be needed, that is a, you know, is a variable cost that could change any time. So we really took a look at that and made sure that we only budgeted exactly what we were thinking we were going to need. Okay, so you have your out-of-district students. I already went over that. Your contracted services. So we're decreasing that, and because due really basically to your contracted nursing services, the anticipated need is just not there, so we felt comfortable actually decreasing those services. Your outside evaluations did increase, though, because if you go back to the slide where we showed we see an uptick of kids being evaluated or classified that are coming in that really need evaluations, we're going to increase that because we're seeing a lot of special education referrals. We're seeing a lot of kids come in that, you know, need bilingual evaluations. And we're seeing a lot of need for translators also. So we felt like we should increase that line item because right now we're starting to see where, you know, the lines are running a little thin in this year's budget where we're needing to transfer money to cover those costs. Your consultants, so the increase is due to services such as teacher of the deaf and OTPT. I don't think we have a teacher a teacher of the deaf on staff, so we have to go through contracted services for that. So that's why we're increasing that. And then OTPT is something that is always needed throughout the school year, and you'll see that in the blanket RFP that we do, that we usually approve in May or June, where you'll see all of the consultants for OTPT approved. Your supplies and equipment, mostly this increase is due to the startup of a new program. So you're going to need to get kick-started with a new program. We felt that we knew exactly what we needed for that program and nothing more, and that's why you saw the increase, but we tried to keep it to a minimum, but enough to make it effective to where the program can get started and up and running for 24-25. Your home instruction is always based on need. We're just anticipating, you know, lower home instruction than needed from the previous years, so we felt comfortable lowering that. And then your curriculum writing decreased because, again, it's the same thing as in the curriculum department. It's based off of need, and we feel that we do not need as much as we anticipated we needed last year. And again, your textbooks also. Last year, I think there was a bigger infusion in textbooks for special education. This year, we do not need to replace as much as we did last year in the previous years. And that is it for my budget presentation. You have all three names up there if you have any questions about any department, but go ahead, Mr. Lonsky.
I know you mentioned using the 2% plus the bank cap. I think the board needs to hear what that number is, though.
Yeah, and I knew you were going to ask that because I was calculating it today, but I did not bring it with me because I was thinking about talking about that for February 20th, but I just wanted to talk about exactly what we were thinking and what we were seeing.
Right, and you're going to show then the tax increase, correct, if any at all?
Yeah, we got the assessed valuation, the ratables. They did go up from the previous year, so we are basing off of that number. I think we were looking at I think the tax impact last year was about 1.12, and now it's about at 1.16 with these numbers. And then I have the breakdown based like
the dollar amount, correct, like you did last time?
Going to 2%, going to 1, using the 1 million or using all of it.
Yeah, because that was helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Vin, sorry, just one question. What's the total cost per pupil for the budget? I didn't get that at the
I can get that for you.
Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, I can include that in the next presentation. Usually we include the total cost per pupil over the years, how much it increases or decreases. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Very detailed and very helpful. Any other questions from anybody on that? Okay. All right, we're going to go to HIB. Mr. Ballone?
Yes, the harassment, intimidation, bullying report from the time period January 12th, 2024 through February 1st, 2024, there was 1 incident reported.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We're going to move to old business. Any old business?
I do have some old business. At the last meeting, Mr. Petrino had asked for an update on the ESS numbers, and I'm happy to report. So when we started, actually prior to starting with ESS in the fall of 2021, we were at a fill rate for teachers of 45%, which was pretty low. We then began starting with ESS in the spring of 2022, and we increased 10% up to 55%. Then we saw a sharp increase up to 79% in the fall of 2022, essentially being established with ESS. And new board members, I'm not sure if you know what ESS is, but it's the company we use for our daily substitutes. In the spring of 2023, it was basically flat, and then we have now seen a sharp increase up to 90% from the fall until now. So again, happy to report that ESS is working for us, and our fill rates are above acceptable.
Thank you. Any other old business? Okay. Any new business?
I had a question.
Oh.
So this is both Val for you and Mr. Zittermer. Just need a little clarification because obviously I'm new on the board.
Yeah, of course.
So regarding the process for filling any board vacancies, and I know we communicated a little bit over email, but I had some more questions around it.
Sure.
You know, obviously it appeared, the board, the entire board was excluded, I know, from the formatting of the interview questions. And the questions weren't shared for board members to review, contrary to the policy that I read, which was 0143. And again, in comparison to other districts in the state of New Jersey, you know, it's a collective effort. It's not just, they involve the entire board in question creations, or at the very least, they will seek feedback on questions that are, you know, being formulated or prepared for the actual interview process. So I'm just curious about the consistency of this process in past board vacancies. And then I really would like to request a thorough review of policy 0143. We need to focus on adding specific points to eliminate any ambiguity that might suggest this responsibility solely rests on the board leadership's shoulders. So I just want to have a little bit more clarification around that policy 0143. I read it more as a collective thing, so I just want to understand the reasoning behind why this vacancy was, I guess, handled maybe differently than previous.
I'm just quickly glancing at the policy. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that the policy says that the full board develops the questions? Because
It doesn't.
yeah, I was going to say I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought that you said something different. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. My question's more around, it said that the Board of Education will, and there's no specific, it's not laid out specifically that it's just the board or it's just the president or it's just, so I guess my questions are twofold. Like, why was it that it was just the leadership that kind of formulated the questions? And that's acceptable, but why the rest of the board was not pulled in, not so much for anything else, but just, you know, the person that's going to be sitting on the board is going to be, we're all going to be working collectively. It would be really great that, you know, we all had somewhat of a say in the process or the questions or, and I'm just not sure. And again, is this how it was handled for past vacancies? I mean, we've had 2, unfortunately, resignations, you know, in less than a year almost, and 3, okay. So, you know, and also there's so many people here. We all come with diverse backgrounds, experiences, and I think it would be beneficial to have the questions even if the leadership kind of pulls it together, to kind of have us, the board, have a say in it.
Before I turn it over to the board president, the only thing I'll say in my experience as board counsel is I've seen it done a lot of different ways. A lot of times the full board kind of is very in the weeds on coming up with questions. In other cases, it's the board officers that formulate questions. I think sometimes, and I'm not talking about Marlboro, so let me be perfectly clear about that. Sometimes there's concerns that if all the board members get the questions ahead of time, that unfortunately there's concern that sometimes that's going to be leaked to candidates. Again, I am not saying that was the case here. I want to be perfectly clear on that, but sometimes that's why it is done internally, I'll call it, with the board officers, and then having those questions shared prior to the actual interviews of the candidates, just because of concerns about confidentiality. I'll be honest with you, and I've seen it happen in other districts where board members get the questions and they send them to their friends who may have applied for the open seats, and then the integrity of the entire process is compromised. Again, not saying that's what happened here. I just want to be clear on that's why it happens that way in some districts, and I can turn it over to the board president to speak to this particular case. And we did have a discussion in closed session, as you know, before we came out. I don't want to discuss publicly what we discussed in closed session, but you know what we discussed in there from a legal point of view. So.
And just in this situation, Mr. Lolansky and I made the decision to kind of just craft the questions between us and keep them. And again, to Mr. Zittimer's point, we had conversation in executive prior to coming out. Well, you know what we covered. But that was the decision that was made. But we can absolutely, if you'd like to look at that policy and send me your feedback, we are going to have another policy committee meeting in the very near future. We just have to iron out the date. So if you have feedback on that policy itself, I welcome you to obviously share that so that we can discuss it in the committee meeting. You should absolutely do that. And I always welcome everybody in the community and board members to share their feedback on any policy. You certainly can do that, but that was a decision that Mr. Lolansky and I had made to not share the questions until, well, I'll leave it at that because you know the conversation we had in executive. Would that answer your question, though? Sure. Any other new business? Okay. Public comments?
I have none on my list. Would anybody like to speak?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to the board for all the hard work that you do and congratulate the newest member, Ashley McCormick. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Okay. There will not be another executive session, so we're just going to bypass that, and I will make a motion to close the meeting. Do I have a second? Annette? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.